Last class, I was discussing about Plato's theory of education, and I told you that Plato's work on education is supposed to be one of the finest works in the field of education, and his ideas on education continue to influence the people and the states in the Western countries till today. And Plato considered providing education as the most essential function performed by the state, and that is why Plato called state as essentially a pedagogic institution. So if in exam it is asked why Plato calls state essentially pedagogic institution, I hope you can understand. And the Plato's treatment of education is comprehensive. He touches all the aspects of the education, and Plato's theory of education, his book Republic, is actually considered by Rousseau as the finest book ever written in the field of education. So as far as Plato's theory of education is concerned, one of the reasons why he gives the theory of education. So I'll go side by side. It is simple. There is less to explain. So you can just write that why Plato gives the theory of education. Fine. Right. One of the most important factor behind giving the theory of education is that Plato's ideal state depends upon his theory of, or Plato's ideal state depends upon his theory of education. Now, if you will ask me this question, why? The answer is, in Plato's ideal state, the state is divided into three classes. Now, in the population, who has which spiritual quality, that is to be decided. And to find out who has which spiritual quality, Plato goes for the education system. Okay? Now here you can find the difference between caste system in India and Plato's system of classes. The class system was not based on merit, whereas Plato's system of classes is based on merit. Fine. So who has which quality? This is decided on the basis of merit. In caste system, it is decided on the basis of birth. Now you have to understand the fine distinction between Plato and Indian caste system. According to Plato, man is born with certain qualities. Fine. And these qualities are the qualities of soul. And these qualities are given by God. Okay? But in order how to identify it, Plato goes for a merit-based system. But if we talk about Indian philosophy or Indian tradition, caste is by birth. People have different qualities, but that status is not based on any merit. Here, if you are born in a Brahmin caste, you are Brahmin. That is not the case of Plato's education. So there is a fine line of distinction between Plato's theory of justice and Indian concept of caste system. Okay? So why do we require the education system? We require the education system to identify which person has what spiritual qualities. Okay? Now, yesterday I told that Plato was influenced by the system that was prevalent in Athens and also prevalent in Sparta, and then he gave his own views, his own ideas also he attaches, and actually because Sparta defeated Athens, it was natural for Plato to think that the system of Sparta is superior to the system of Athens. Okay? Plato as such in his system, in his ideal state, was very much influenced by the Spartan state. So in his education system, he is influenced by the Spartan system as well as by Athenian system, but he takes more from Spartan system and less from Athenian system. So yesterday I was discussing about the Athenian system. Okay. So I will tell you what are the features of Athenian system which Plato liked and what were the systems which Plato disliked. Fine. So what was in the Athenian system which Plato liked and what was there which Plato disliked. Fine. So let us talk about in the Athenian system what Plato disliked first, because he disliked more. What Plato disliked. First thing, that in Athens there was no state sponsored education system. No state sponsored education system means education was privatized, and Plato was against the privatization of education. Education was privatized. Fine. So education, if it gets privatized, what will happen? Only those who can afford, you can write side by side, only those who can afford will get an opportunity to get educated. Only those who can afford. So what will happen? Many talented people who may have the talent, but their talent will not blossom because they will not be able to go through the process of education. So people have a reason in a raw form. Through the education system, you finish it. You try to give the finishing touch. You give that reason a shape. Fine. So anything is in a crude or a raw material form, you give a fine shape to it. And for that, education is needed. So if you think that if the entire population of India is educated, if the entire population of India is skilled, we can create obviously a better society. So our people are the most important assets. They are the human resource. And if you waste the human resource because you are unable to create the opportunities, and if you are going for privatization of the education, it means you want to retain the society's elitist character. Okay, so Plato was against the privatization of education. Plato didn't believe that education of a child has to be dependent on the will and the capacity of the parents or the guardians. Rather, he wanted that the education of the child should be dependent on or should be given by the state. And if a state does not provide the education, it is nothing but the wastage of the resources. The demographic dividend of a country will go waste. Have you understood this? Fine. And that was also his main criticism against the Sophism. So Sophism versus Socratic tradition of education. Okay. Now the second thing of Athens, which Socrates or which Plato didn't like, was in Athens, women were not given opportunity for education. Women were not given opportunity for education. Fine. So Plato has provided equality of opportunity to the women to get educated. Plato believed that women do not suffer from any natural disadvantage in getting educated. And Plato also believed that if women are not educated, you are leaving half of the human race. And this half of the human race, if educated, would have contributed positively to the development of the state. Okay, so again, this is wastage. Next thing, in Athens, there was neglect of military education. Neglect of military or physical education. This is what Plato didn't like, and Plato also believed in the compulsory military education, okay, to be given to both men and women. Fine. Now, what was there in Athens which Plato liked? So, which, you can write, which feature of Athenian system Plato liked? Which feature of the Athenian system Plato liked? So, in Athens, though physical education was neglected, but in Athens there was focus on developing the critical faculties of human mind. In Athens, there was a focus on developing the critical faculties of human mind. Means, in Athens, students were taught philosophy, logic, and you can say dialectics, which Socrates has started. So, philosophy, logic, and dialectics. Okay, so this Plato included in his system of education. Okay, now write the features of Spartan system. The features of Spartan system liked by Plato. Point number 1, state sponsored education. Education was sponsored by the state. State sponsored education. Okay. Second thing is, both men and women had equal opportunity. Both men and women had equal opportunity. And the third thing is compulsory military education. Compulsory military education. So, as an assignment, you just ponder on whether in India should we be introducing the compulsory military education, and then we will discuss about it. Fine. Now, the only flaw, according to Plato, in the education system of Sparta, the only flaw, according to the Plato, in the education system of Sparta was less focus was on developing the critical faculties of mind, or you can say the neglect of the development of the critical faculties of mind. So in Sparta, that was one deficiency. Okay, so now in your copies you write why education should be controlled by the state. First of all, write why education should be sponsored by the state according to Plato. Why education should be sponsored by the state according to Plato. Okay, so education should be sponsored by the state because those who could not afford will miss the education. Those who cannot afford will miss the education, and state will be deprived of the benefit of its human resource. The state will be deprived of the benefits of the human resource. Next, why Plato allowed women? Why Plato allowed women? Right? According to Plato, women do not suffer any disadvantage. According to Plato, women do not suffer any disadvantage with respect to acquiring education. Second, if women are not educated, state is depriving itself. If women are not educated, state is depriving itself from the talent of half of the human race. Next, next in your copies you write, Plato not only supported state-sponsored education. Plato not only supported state-sponsored education. Plato also favored state-controlled education. Plato also favored state-controlled education. Underline state-controlled education. State-controlled education means, right, he was not in favor of granting autonomy. He was not in favor of granting autonomy to the educational institutions. Right? He wanted state should keep watch. He wanted that state should keep watch on what is being taught. He wanted that state should keep watch on what is being taught. Okay. Now you write that according to Plato, education is not in favor of granting autonomy to the educational institutions. Right? He wanted state should keep watch. He wanted that state should keep watch on what is being taught. He wanted that state should keep watch on what is being taught. Okay. Now you write that according to Plato, education is the most important. Education is the most important means of political socialization. Education is the most important means of political socialization. Fine. Write it down. What is political socialization? What is political socialization? Fine. So, socialization. What is socialization? So, socialization is when a child is born, we gradually teach that child the do's and don'ts of the society. so that he becomes a member of the society. So that he becomes the member of the society. Similarly, political socialization means making citizens, getting citizens aware of the political system. It means socializing the citizens in the political system. Okay? Right? Socializing the citizens mean they become the desirable citizens. They become the desirable citizens. Fine. So according to Plato, a state should keep the strict watch on what is being taught. And if you see what is being taught by the sophists are teaching all those things which are detrimental to the state. Sophists are teaching self-interest is prime. Sophists are not treating that a state is natural, rather they are undermining the value of the state, that state is artificial. So such type of teachings may have the negative consequences for the state. We can take an example. Suppose what we see at present, the conflict between the government of India and certain educational institutions like JNU, Jamia or Jadavpur University. And it is believed that in these universities, people are taught with such ideas which may not be in the long-term interest of the country. This is thought in that way. So Plato's idea is also similar, that a state should keep the strict watch so that the education system should be producing the ideal citizens and not the rebellion citizens. Okay? So Plato has, now let us see Plato's scheme of education. Plato's scheme of education. So in Plato's scheme of education, point number 1 is state sponsored. Point number 2 is state controlled. Means a state is keeping the strict watch or sponsorship. Fine. And then women were also given equal opportunity. Women were given equal opportunities. Women were also given equal opportunities. Okay? So Plato's scheme of education. Next, write that Plato has given the scheme of education. Plato has given the scheme of education which will continue for 50 years. So minimum 50 years of education for the philosopher king. So in Plato's scheme of education, education is almost a lifelong thing, and you can understand that the knowledge is so infinite that even for a single subject, a single life is not sufficient. So this is what the Plato is going for, a very, very minimum, I will say minimum, not maximum 50 years of age. Rather, Plato is going for the most conservative approach in the sense that he is prescribing the 50 years of education. What I feel that even infinite years will not be sufficient for any person to know the truth. Okay, so anyway, so now let us see. So Plato's education system, the first is the primary, or you can say pre-primary stage. Pre-primary stage, that is from 0 to 6 years. 0 to 6 years. What should be taught to the children of this year, this age? So Plato suggests teach music, teach gymnastics, and third, teach moral stories. Teach moral stories. So all children in Plato's ideal state, including the children of the producer class, all children in Plato's ideal state will have an opportunity of education. So unlike Indian system where the Shudras and the untouchables were deprived from education, in Plato's ideal state, neither women nor the people of even the producer class is deprived from the education. Okay, and see how comprehensive his idea is. So he teaches that, or he tells that the children should be taught with music. Now what is the advantage of music? So he believed that you can write music as the exercise of mind. Music is an exercise of mind. Gymnastics is an exercise of body. So your physical body. Mind, your mental growth. Physical body, your physical aspect of personality. And the moral stories will help in the character building. Moral stories will help in the character building. So moral stories will help in the character building. You tell the stories of great people. So this will develop their right value system. Okay. And then the second stage. In the second stage, I am including primary and secondary. So all children will be given this opportunity also. This is up till 18 years of age. 18 years of age. And in this time, all subjects like we teach history, geography, and civics, and science, and all that basic mathematics, etc. will be taught. Fine. Now, next is the first screening or the first filtration. First screening or the first filtration. The first screening or the first filtration will take place at the age of 18. Fine. Now, they will be put to one, you can say a sort of a entrance test. Fine. So, in this test, those who will fail, means it will be assumed that they do not have an aptitude. Fine. So, those who will fail, they will join the producer class. And those who show the aptitude for further learning, fine, those who pass the screening test means they have an aptitude for further learning. So in this stage, we are testing who are men of copper, who are men of silver. So men of copper means the producer class who does not have an elements of the courage to become a soldier class will not be able to qualify this entrance exam. So they will be joining the producer class. So now they will pass. So those who pass, they will show the aptitude of further learning. Those who pass, they will show the aptitude of further learning. Fine. Means they have shown the element of courage. Fine. So from 18 to 20 years, they will be in the compulsory military training. Compulsory military training. From 18 to 20 years, they will go through the compulsory military training. Okay. because they have shown the aptitude for that. So those who didn't have an aptitude for courage, they were not promoted, but these people have shown the aptitude for the military training. Okay, now the second filtration. The second filtration or the second screening. The second filtration or the second screening will take place at age of 20. At the age of 20. Fine. Now, some will fail and some will pass. So those who fail, they have shown an aptitude of courage, and that is why they were given military training. So they will join the military, and those who will pass means they have shown an aptitude for further learning. So they are the man of reason and they are the man of courage, and they will join the soldier class. So now you have understood how he identifies different classes. So now the higher education. Fine. So 0 to 6 you can say primary, 6 to 18 secondary. At the age of 18 first test. Those who will fail will join the producer class. It means these people have not shown the element of courage. So now those who have passed have shown the element of courage. From 18 to 20 years compulsory military education. Second test, those who have passed means they have an ability for further learning, so they have the element of reason, and the others will join the producer class. So now the higher education. Fine, no more tests. No more tests. Why? Because by the second screening we have understood who has the element of reason. By the second screening we have understood who have the element of reason. Fine. So now for the next 15 years, from 20 till 35 years of age, they will be taught dialectics, logic, philosophy, and the upgraded form of the general subjects. So this is the age when dialectics will be taught. So you all also are in the right age when you can understand the philosophy. So till age of 20, you could understand only science, but now you will understand the philosophy. And from 35 to 50 years, that is 15 years of practical experience. There will be a 15 years of practical experience. Okay. So at the age of 50, person after having the theoretical and the practical knowledge, at the age of 50, person having the theoretical and the practical knowledge, right, shows, or at the age of 50, by gaining the theoretical knowledge till 35 years of age and gaining the practical knowledge for 15 more years, so that at the age of 50, person will become eligible to become the philosopher king. At the age of 50, a person will become eligible to become a philosopher king. Fine. So what is a qualification of the philosopher king? The man of reason, but not just a man of reason, has gone for the specialized scheme of education for 35 years theoretical and 15 years practical. So at the age of 50, person, you write, at the age of 50, person becomes eligible for for the philosopher king. At the age of 50, person becomes eligible. Okay, so you write what are the eligibilities of the philosopher king. What are the eligibilities of the philosopher king? Point number 1, he is a man of reason. He is a man of reason. Second, however, it is not enough. It is not enough, right? Reason has to be groomed. Reason has to be groomed by a special scheme of education. By a special scheme of education. So when the grooming takes place, the full flowering of excellence will take place. So when grooming will take place, the full flowering of excellence will take place. Okay. Now you write, every year many persons will be, many philosophers will emerge. Every year many philosophers will flowering of excellence will take place. So when grooming will take place, the full flowering of excellence will take place. Okay. Now you write, every year many persons will be, many philosophers will emerge. Every year many philosophers will emerge. Suppose this year 5 persons have shown that ability. Next year 15 persons have shown the ability. So every year many philosophers will emerge. Many, I am not saying too many. Too many will be the ignorant. Many here, more than 1 or 2 philosophers will emerge. Now write, now the question is, which philosopher will be the philosopher king? So understand this question. Through the education system, many people show that ability, not just one. Many people. So many people here, I mean not just one, but more than one. They will show the ability. Now the question is, suppose from this year, last year, suppose there are total 40 philosophers. Suppose there are total 40 philosophers. Now, out of 40, it can be any number, 40, 60, 100, whatever. Out of 40, or let us say n philosophers, how to select the philosopher king? How to select the philosopher king? Who will be the philosopher king? How will you find out this person, this philosopher will be the king? Okay, so now many of you may be thinking that we will organize some debate, we will organize some race to find out the philosopher. Fine. So 50 persons are eligible. How to find out who will be the ruler? You can also think there can be an election. You can think there will be some race to find out. But Plato will think differently. So Plato is thinking differently. So how Plato is thinking? So Plato is thinking differently. So in this context, note down one statement of Plato. Those states are well governed where rulers are reluctant to govern. Rather than where rulers are eager to govern. Those states are well governed where rulers are reluctant to govern rather than where they are eager to govern. Okay, so you understand this statement? Which state are well governed? Fine. So he says those states are well governed where rulers are reluctant to govern rather than where rulers are eager to govern. Okay. Now, in this statement is hidden the answer of our question. What was our question? Our question was how to select the king, or how to select who will be our philosopher king out of the given number. And we are thinking, because we may not have our human of that much reason. Okay, so we may be thinking that we will have to go for some competition or some race or some debate, but it is not the case. Fine. So what is the case here? The case is there will be no problem. There will be no problem at all. Why? Why there will be no problem and no competition is needed? Why? Because philosophers have the love for knowledge. So philosophers' real love is knowledge. So philosophers have the love for knowledge. Okay? Right? Philosophers, write it down. Philosophers have a love for knowledge. Philosophers possess true knowledge. Philosophers possess true knowledge. As the philosophers possess true knowledge, philosophers understand that money and power is not a source of happiness. Money and power are not the source of happiness. They understand this. Fine. Whereas the true happiness is in knowledge. So since this person knows that money cannot give me true knowledge, money cannot give me true happiness, or power does not give me true happiness, these persons do not have lust for power. They are not running for power. They are not in the race for power. Their true love is knowledge. So they will be running after knowledge rather than power. Fine. So there is no competition at all. You can write side by side. There is no competition at all, because philosophers are actually not willing to govern. Philosophers are actually not willing to govern. Why they are not willing to govern? Because they are men of knowledge. Why they are not willing to govern? Because they are man of knowledge. And man of knowledge knows money and power is of no use. Is this clear? Right? So only those who are ignorant, of this fact, they will run after money and power. So for philosopher, becoming a ruler is actually an obstacle in the path of their true love. What is their true love? Acquiring knowledge. This will disturb them. Fine. But according to Plato, philosopher is the symbol of knowledge as well as the symbol of sacrifice. Philosopher is not only the symbol of knowledge, he is also the symbol of sacrifice. Underline, symbol of sacrifice. Fine. So as a symbol of sacrifice, the philosopher is setting an example, right? As a symbol of sacrifice, he is setting an example. Okay, what example he is setting? The example of sacrificing his first love. The example of sacrificing his first love. What is his first love? Knowledge. So, as a part of our duty, towards the state, the philosopher will accept the responsibility reluctantly. Okay, so now what will happen? No philosopher wants to become the ruler. So they will request, and actually the people will have to come and request to the philosopher, and philosopher will accept it as a part of the duty. Okay, so philosopher will accept it as a part of duty at the cost of sacrifice. So you have understood this, that there will be many philosophers. Now, how to choose a ruler? So philosopher doesn't want to be a ruler. Why? Because he has no love for power. Why? Because he has true knowledge that power and money, they keep on changing the hands. So what is to be done? So people have to come to the philosopher. They will request the philosopher that he should accept this responsibility as a duty towards the state. And philosopher, as a man of knowledge, sacrifices his first love and for the sake of duty towards the state. You all were concerned about how Plato will find who has which quality. This was your problem. Fine. So the answer is simple: through his education system, which also has the screening process. So you can also understand the difference between Plato's social classes and caste system. Caste system is based on birth arbitrarily. You are not determining who has which quality. And Plato's social classes can be nearer to the Varna system, because Varna system was not based on birth, it was based on worth. Okay. Now the question was, out of many, how, like there will be many philosophers, how to choose the philosopher king? So the problem is, there is no issue, there is no competition, nothing, because philosophers, they do not want to be the kings. They do not want to be the kings. Fine. And why they do not want to be the kings? Because they have no lust for power. Fine. And their first love is knowledge. And if they come to power, it will create obstruction in their pursuit of knowledge. Fine. So what is to be done? What is to be done? अब हमें क्या करना होगा? What is to be done? So people will have to request, and when people will request, then the philosopher will accept to become the king. Fine. So it means philosopher will accept it as a duty, and for the sake of the duty, philosopher is sacrificing his true love. So what a philosopher is? How do you describe philosopher? Philosopher is the symbol of knowledge. And second, philosopher is the symbol of sacrifice. He is a symbol of knowledge and sacrifice. Philosopher is the symbol of knowledge and sacrifice. Fine. So now let us see this statement. Those states are well governed where rulers are reluctant to govern. Rather, where rulers are eager to govern. Fine. So, who will be reluctant to govern? One who is a man of knowledge. Philosopher will be reluctant to govern because he knows that, or he has no love for power. Whereas who will be eager to govern? So those who are man of ignorance. So ignorant persons think that money and power is everything, and ignorant persons, they will always think in this way, and they will have lust for power. So which states are poorly governed? Where rulers are ignorant. Which states are nicely governed? Where rulers are the man of knowledge. So what Plato says, until philosophers are the rulers, or rulers learn philosophy, there is no end to the predicament of human life. There is no end to the predicament of human life. Fine. So suppose this comes as a question. What all you will write? Take the points. Point number 1. Plato was concerned with the state of Athens. Point number 2. He wanted to make Athens an ideal state from a corrupt state. Point number 3. Plato believed that the real problem is because the ruling class is ignorant. Next point. The ruling class is ignorant, and that is why they are running after money and power. The ruling class is ignorant, that is why they are running after money and power. Next, according to Plato, ignorance is vice, V-I-C-E, vice, and knowledge is virtue. According to Plato, ignorance is vice and knowledge is virtue. Okay, right. Hence, until and unless the rulers are knowledgeable, they cannot do justice. Until and unless the rulers are not knowledgeable, they cannot do justice. Right? Hence, he believes that until philosophers are the rulers, or rulers learn philosophy, hence he believes that until philosophers are the rulers, or rulers learn philosophy, there is no end to the predicament of human life. There is no end to the predicament of human life. Okay, and then you come to the statement, right? According to him, philosophers will be reluctant to govern. According to him, philosophers will be reluctant to govern because they do not have the lust for power. Whereas ignorant persons who believe that power and money is a source of happiness will be eager to govern. So this is how you will explain Plato's idea. But now you will have to take the position. Do you think that it is right? Do you think that the ruler can provide a good rule? You have to take this position that, do you think that a person who does not have interest in governance, interest in ruling, can provide the best rule. So this is the point which you will have to bring in your critical evaluation. Fine. So the thing is, what position you will take. Suppose you have to make somebody a ruler. Would you make that person who is reluctant to govern? The answer is no. Fine. Because in order to perform any task properly, in order to perform any task excellently, it is also important that we should have interest in it. Fine. If I will not have interest in teaching, I cannot do it properly. Fine. If you will not have interest in political science, you will not be able to do it with excellence. Fine. So, will you agree to Plato's suggestion? Will you appoint a person who has no interest? Logically, no. Fine. But is Plato wrong? I am giving you two questions. Will you appoint a person as a ruler who has no interest in ruling? This is my first question to you. Second, whether Plato was wrong in suggesting that the ignorance of the ruling class is the cause of corruption. What position will you take on these two things? Will you appoint such person? If you will ask my judgment, I will say no. Because I believe that to do anything efficiently, interest is important. Fine. Second, whether Plato was wrong, that is also not. I also believe, yes, if we are ignorant, we can never perform our task. If I am ignorant about my task, how can I perform my task excellently? So how will I go for critical evaluation? How will I go for conclusion? What am I supposed to do? Plato has put me in dilemma. Okay. So in case of Plato, remember one thing, and this is the general criticism of Plato, which you can use at multiple places. Fine. One general criticism is Plato's diagnosis is right, but his prescriptions are wrong. So Plato's diagnosis, Plato is not a perfect doctor. His diagnosis is right. His understanding of the problem, that ignorance is a problem, is correct. But if Plato is your doctor, only ask him what is the root cause of problem. Don't take his medicines. Fine. But his prescriptions is always wrong. The solution of the ignorance is not that you appoint a person who doesn't have a interest. Fine. And now, why his prescriptions are wrong? Because he always ignores human psychology. He looks solution for politics in ethics only. But you also have to give importance to human psychology. So the biggest flaw of Plato is Plato has ignored human psychology. Maybe according to the human psychology, if one person continues to do one task, he may not be doing it with interest. Okay. So if the question comes that the best rulers are those who are reluctant to govern rather than eager to govern, in the last paragraph, in the critical evaluation, what will you write? You can write that Plato's diagnosis is correct, but his prescriptions are wrong. Plato's diagnosis is correct, but his prescriptions are wrong. Fine, right? It is true that the ignorance is a factor. It is true that the ignorance is a factor in the corruption of the ruling class. It is true that ignorance is a factor behind the corruption of the ruling class. But the solution is not to make those persons rulers who do not have the interest in their work. The solution is not to make those persons rulers who have interest in their work. Right? Hence, to tackle corruption, we will have to think about those persons rulers who do not have the interest in their work. The solution is not to make those persons rulers who have interest in their work. Right? Hence, to tackle corruption, we will have to think about some other measures also. To tackle corruption, we need to think about some other measures also. Right? In the last, one fundamental problem of Plato is he completely ignores the element of human psychology. He completely ignores the element of human psychology. He only tries to find the solution of politics. He only tries to find the solution of politics in philosophy rather than in psychology. So psychology can be more useful to address the problem of politics than philosophy. Okay, so I hope you have understood his theory of education. So what we are doing, we are studying Republic. In Republic, what is given? The constitution of Plato's ideal state. So the constitution of Plato's ideal state starts with Plato's idea of justice. The way the constitution of India starts with the preamble, and even Indian constitution talks about justice, social, economic and political. Now after that, Plato starts discussing the organization of his ideal state into three classes. To identify who belongs to which class, he gives the first institution, that is the institution of education. And then he gives the second institution, that is the institution of communism. So now we will do the institution of communism. So you write Plato's theory of communism. Plato's theory of communism. Okay? And in this theory, we will do two questions. First question, if education system is the prime mechanism communism is the secondary mechanism. If education system is a prime mechanism, communism is the secondary mechanism to establish the ideal state. So this is the question we have to know. And the second question, compare Plato's communism with modern communism. Right? The second question, compare Plato's communism with modern communism. Fine? So these are the two questions.
Mm-hmm.